Hi there, this is Phil with PhilFX, and got a new tutorial starting out the fall 2012 semester year. And this first tutorial, we're going to take a quick look and a very fast overview of Maya 2016 and go through some of the differences in the features that have changed actually quite a bit from Maya 2015 and all the previous versions. So let's go ahead and get started. So when you open up Maya right off the bat and you look at 2016, you can see that there's quite a bit of difference just in the user interface. The familiar icons that you saw before have changed quite a bit. They've gone to a color scheme here. So up here on the shelf, we have curves and surfaces. They've combined the curve icons with the surface icons. Given that they're all NURBS, that actually does make sense. And you can see that those icons are all blue in color. Polygons are yellow in color. Up here at sculpting, this is a very brand new thing that has been added to Maya 2016. It's not exactly the same functionality that you will find in the standalone Mudbox application, but actually there's quite a bit of sculpting that you can do within Maya now that for moderate sculpting and working with high resolution polygon meshes, so there's quite a bit that you can do just within Maya itself. We've got our rigging tab, animation, and rendering. Now some of the older ones, FX, excuse me, that's one, that's a new one, and FX caching. The old shelves are still available. There's the dynamics, fluids, fur, hair, muscle. There's paint effects, XGen. I have RenderMan installed on my machine, so these are tabs for RenderMan. You wouldn't have that. And then there's the custom shelf. So we can go back to here. So anyway, the icons have changed quite a bit. And going down the side here, you can see that the icons for your move commands and for your window presets have changed a little bit also. Going up here to the top, we can see that our menus have changed. So the selection of menus, there used to be one for curves, there used to be one for rather surfaces and then polygons. They've combined those all together, so now we have modeling. And if we go over here, we see we have the mesh tool menus, and we have the surfaces and curves also. So those two have been combined together. We go to rigging, and we have our rigging tools, and we can see our rigging menus for creating animation. We can skeletons and skins and add our constraints and deformations. We have an animation menu, and all of our familiar animation tools are on here. And they've combined, there used to be a dynamics and an end dynamics, and they've combined all that together, so now there's just effects. So we have particles, end cloth, end cache, field solvers, Bifrost. All of that has been put together on one menu. And then we have rendering. And in rendering, they've added back the toon. So if you use the contour shaders, you can do your toon rendering, and the familiar rendering menus for controlling your renders. So that's pretty much on that. Let's go ahead and go back to modeling, and let's walk through preferences, and because those have changed. There's been quite a few changes to that also. So if we open up preferences, going down through here, some of these are somewhat the same. UI elements, that's the same. View cube, I don't have view cube on, but if I enable this and say show view cube and hit save, and we go in here, and guess what? We don't see view cube. Well, the reason for that is in Maya 2016, the default viewport is viewport 2.0. And really that you want to be using viewport 2.0 if at all possible. If you go back to legacy high quality viewport, there's our view cube. And so you can see, if you like using the view cube, you'll be able to see it, but you have to be using the high quality viewport. If you use viewport 2.0, the view cube is not available. And again, also, if you're using viewport 2.0, there really isn't any reason to essentially have it enabled, because you're not going to see it. So that's typically why, in fact, I don't have it on there. Some of these, the displays, kinematics, these haven't changed much from the past. Going down here to animation, this has changed a fair amount. All right, so there's this new thing called GPU override. I'm not going to talk about that today, but they've done a lot of things to speed up how animation can render when you're working with Maya 2016. Color management, this is huge. This is completely different. I'm going to do a separate tutorial all on color management and linear workflows. This has changed significantly from everything in the past. It looks a little complicated, but actually in terms of creating linear workflows, this is a lot easier to work with. And essentially right now, you don't need to worry about this. It comes up with color management enabled. Just work with that way, and everything that we'll be doing in class, this will work fine. For files and projects, I always mention this in class, so you want to have autosave enabled, and you can have it so it prompts you or doesn't prompt you. It just goes ahead and does an autosave. And the number of intervals, right here it's set for 10 minutes. I think for class, that's a good idea. And the other thing you probably want to do for class is limit the number of autosaves. So if you don't have this selected, it's just going to keep autosaving files, and you literally could have hundreds of files after weeks of working with Maya, and so that really isn't what you want. You probably tend to want to limit that, so I always do this. So this says that at most there's only going to be at any one time 10 files in my autosave. So I get 10 snapshots that were 10 minutes apart, and so that would say that I could save things and see things for 100 minutes back. So, you know, that's close to 2 hours, not quite, but that would save you if you took this up and actually made this 12. Then and it was 10 minutes apart. That'd be 120 minutes, so that's 2 hours. So you would save up to 2 hours worth of work. That's probably what would work for what most people need to do. Let's see, going down here. Filing and rendering, for class rendering, Maya always comes up as the default rendering, being Maya software. We almost always work in Mental Ray, so you really would do better to set that and have Mental Ray be the default rendering engine. Going down, the rest of these, again, some of these not too much change from what you've seen in the past. On undos, you want undos on. Default, the queue size is 50. I usually make that about 200. XGen is new. We haven't talked and used XGen much. The advanced class will get a chance to do that. The beginning class, you won't work with XGen at all. GPU cache, this again is all brand new. I'm not going to talk about that today, but this has to do with speeding up your animations using viewport 2.0. Save actions and applications, these are pretty much common to the past, so we'll just hit save and go with those. See, I did mention, viewport 2.0 is your default viewport, and this is really where you want to be. This really works nice for rendering your output and displaying both animations and things with shaders on there and with materials on there. It works very, very nice. The render setup has changed. So if we look over here, we've got one new button right there, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, but let's go look at the render setup. So if we look at our rendering setup and go to Mental Ray, this has actually changed quite a bit from what we've had in the past. So we have the common, and this in general is pretty close to what you've seen in the past. So you have the common tab where you Set the file name output, what kind of file you want. You can set a frame range if you're rendering an animation. What is the renderable camera? In this case, I haven't made any custom cameras, so the default is the perspective camera. And yeah, you can set your resolution, height, and width for what it is that you want to render. Going on to quality, this has changed actually quite a bit. So this is a draft default quality, overall quality of 0.25. You probably want to leave that as it is for draft. If you're finally getting to rendering a final project, setting this to 1 probably is what you want for a final project. But I just leave it at 1/4 for right now. The trace depth, if you remember, there used to be, if you went into the quality tab before, there was a ray trace option, and that's how you set your reflection and transmission ray traces. This is where you do it right here, the same kind of thing. So you have reflection and transmission ray trace. This used to be defaulted to 1, which always caused consternation with people, especially if they were making refraction materials like glass, because things would show up black, and it's right off the bat, it's a little bit tough to understand when you made glass why things are showing up black, and it always was because you don't have the trace depth set to being at least 2 or 3 minimum in terms of how the rays are traced in doing a rendering. By setting the default now up to 4 and 4, that's a lot better. The scene here, this is where you would set your image-based lighting and your physical sun and sky. You can go in and if you're doing some different things with lighting or materials, in particular mental ray MIA materials, there are some special settings for that. In general, the default here are fine. You don't need to do anything. This is where you set your frame buffer. At the moment, this is set for we're rendering a EXR, which is a floating point type image. If we want to set this to a JPEG, we can go over here, and for JPEG, it will automatically pick an RGBA for 16-bit, which is actually fine. Configuration here, this is fine in diagnostics. So this actually has changed quite a bit. Let me close this real quick. And if we go up to Windows, go to Setting and Preferences, and we go to Rendering right here, and we want to say Use Legacy Rendering Settings. So if I click on this and say Save, and I go up to here and I get my renders, you don't see that change. These are the new ways. This is the new set of tabs for Mental Ray, not the old legacy ones. In order to see the legacy ones, what you actually have to do is you need to quit Maya. So I'm going to go ahead and quit Maya real quick. Now we've got Maya started again, and here are the old classic ones where we had, here's your quality, but now remember, here's the ray tracing tab for both reflections and refractions. And shadows, your frame buffer is down here on this tab, where there was the other tab over here before where that had the frame buffer. So this is the old legacy. There was a tab now here for indirect lighting, so for controlling global illumination and final gather. So if you need to control final gather with a lot more important the parameters, you really want to use the legacy. So anyway, those are the legacy settings. In general, for myself, I'm going to continue to use the legacy settings because in particular I use Final Gather a lot in a lot of the renders that we do, and we'll want to do that also in class. So we will want to go into our setting and preferences, and when we go to rendering here, we want to use the legacy settings. We can also show render passes. If I click on this, hit save, and now here's the passes tab for doing render passes. Again, the advanced class might use that. The regular Maya class, we won't be using that. So that's the rendering setup. The last thing I want to look at is I clicked on this tab over here, and this is the new Hypershade window. And this is actually pretty amazing. Okay, so the new Hypershade window, they've really radically overhauled, and it's quite a bit different. And if we go in here, and you have the tabs across the top that you're used to seeing, where they have materials and textures and utilities. But now under the create tab here, so if we go up and we create a material, and let's just go ahead and create a Fong material. So here's my Fong material that I just created. And we have this preview window. And this is actually very, very nice. Before, to try and preview a material, you basically had to use in-place rendering and use the render tab, and then you could go in and you could change your parameters. As it stands now, I can go in here and I can add a color to this, so I can make this red. And we see this previewed instantly right here in our preview window. If I want to see what's in my Maya window, let's go ahead and get a mesh in here. So I'll get a polygon, and let's put a sphere in here, and take this sphere, give it a bigger radius, and let me right click on this, and I'm going to assign existing material. So I'm going to assign that Fong material that I just created, and we can go in here, open up the Hypershade window, and I can go in, and under Windows I can put in a viewport, and this is I can put the viewport right here. Come on, do this to me. There we go. So I can see my perspective camera view, and this makes it really pretty nice. So I could put that viewport right in there, and this has the same controls. So I can go in here and hit 6 and see the viewport. And now I actually, while I can go back and I can tab back and forth between this view and my Hypershade, I really don't need to. I have everything I need to work with the Hypershade right here. So I have my viewport that I can see my model, my 3D model, and I have my parameters right here for my shader. I have my node network to see how things are connected, and I have my attribute tab right over here, so I can go in and change the properties and the attributes on that particular shader. So this is really quite handy. This is a fairly substantial improvement. It slows down some things just a little bit, but really overall, I think for some of the gains that you get, it's really nice. You can speed things up a little bit by not having this preview running a lot, and so there's ways that you can disable this or turn this off so you don't have that. But overall, I think this is a real win for all of the Maya users to have the ability to work with this. So let's go ahead and close this, and I'm going to delete this guy right now. Some of the things I want to show also are what's built in now is the modeling toolkit. So if I click over here, I open up and you can see we have the modeling toolkit. And there's a few things right off the bat that really help when you're creating models. And I want to demonstrate some of those things real quick. So let's go in, and I'm going to first start with a box. Let me go into the channel box, and I'm going to scale this up a little bit. Make our box 5, and I want subdivisions to be about 20. So I got a lot of subdivisions on this, and you'll see the reason why. If we go over here to the modeling toolkit, there's some things that we can do right off the bat that are really quite slick. So we have symmetry right here that allows us to, if we want to pick things, we can work with symmetry. Soft selection is right here. So let me demonstrate some of that real quick. So we go in and I'm going to select vertices. So I go into component mode so I can select vertices. And let me go ahead and put symmetry on, and I want to be able to select things symmetrically in the X dimension, and here's X. So if I go here and you can see right off the bat with my cursor, if I pick that corner, I end up getting both of them because I have X symmetry on. And if we then turn on soft select, now you can see, okay, I've gone in and I've picked this vertice and we have soft selection. Now what you're seeing is the color enhancements. The area that's selected the most is this corner vertice, and then there's a gradient in terms of what are transforms that are applied based on the selection. It's going to follow a gradient fall off, and this is the curve of that fall off, all right? And I can change how this fall off goes by. Right now we have that value is 3. If I change that to 5, you can see how far that falls off. These are Maya units. So that's 5 Maya units. This is 2 Maya units. Let's go back to the 3. So we have that. So if I want to do a transform, and I want to transform that vertice, get my W key here, and if I pull this up, you can see what that gradient does in terms of the soft selection and how the combination of both symmetry and soft selection allows me to do some very unique modeling where I can go in and do smooth transitions. So you can see we can make a nice transition. I can take this, I can compress this down. Let's say if I wanted to push the edges down. And so it allows me to do some very nice modeling techniques working with vertices and use the combination of the soft selection. All right, so that demonstrates that. We've got a few other things here in terms of symmetry. We have things called selection constraints. So let me turn that off, and I'm going to turn soft selection off. And I'll turn the symmetry off, and let's look and see what some of these selection constraints, how they work. So if we click on this, we can see we have off, angled border, edge loop, edge ring, and shell. I'm actually going to work this backwards. So if we go to shell, and I just say that, and I put this in edge mode, if I select that, it selects the whole shell. I'm not sure exactly the reason why that was put in there, because quite honestly, if I have this off, and I go in here and I just, well, actually for selecting all of the edges, the shell makes a whole lot of sense, excuse me. If I'm selecting faces, I can just double click on one face and I can select the whole thing. If we have the constraint set for shell and I just click it like that, that is quicker. That is quicker. Where it really benefits you is if you're trying to select edges and or vertices. So if I have shell selected and I'm in edge mode, I double click on that, I select all of the edges for the entire shell, and that is faster. If we go to edge ring, you can see, let me deselect all those. In edge ring, I can go in and I can make selections on edges based on just rings of edges, and that actually is quite nice. Sometimes you may want to take that, and let's say you wanted to just take and scale those. So we could take that and I select those and then I can scale. And so I can just push those out. So that's a very quick way to grab those rings all the way around and then do a scale on that. So you can see where that can be handy in your modeling. Edge loop is the same constraint. I go in here with edge loops and I can quickly grab an edge loop. Same kind of thing, if I wanted to scale that, then I can scale by just selecting that edge loop. In the past, that may not be quite as quick because we know that if we turn this off and I have edges, I can select one, but then if I take and just double click on that, I'll get the edge loop. So now this is a very simple mesh. Sometimes edge loops are a little bit difficult to see when you've got a highly modified and complicated mesh. And so I could see where having the edge loop constraint could be handy on those particular ones. These last two, border and angle, really have to do with edges, and with angle is really for vertices. So let's look at edges first. And to do that, I do want to show there's a couple of unique things that you can do if you're in face mode. All right, and you may not have known this, but I can go in and I can shift select and I can select some faces. All right, and if I am just selecting individual faces, that works out fine. If I go in and I try and do a marquee and select some faces, all right, you can see I just selected all these faces on the back, and I can avoid that by, say, camera-based selection. So now if I do a marquee, I select those faces and I don't select the back faces, all right? So I can quickly go between camera-based selection and non-camera-based selection. Well, the other way you can do that is if I hold down the tab key, I can actually paint, all right? And I'm doing a paint selection here by holding down the tab key. So I've selected those, and that actually does a camera-based selection. You can see I didn't select any of the back ones. Now if I wanted to do a move on a selection, I could pull those out, and I pull out all those faces with that selection. All right, and I can go in here and select that face and pull it out, and say select this face and pull it out. And this is where one of the other features in Maya, there's a thing called the tweak key, which is on your keyboard is the tilde key. So if I select this because I want to pull it out, if I hold this down, I'm holding down the tilde key and I can just select faces and pull. So if you have something that you're doing that maybe it's a very organic modification and you want to pull things out by holding down the tilde key, you can just very quickly go in and you can make modifications just by holding that down. That's called using the tweak key. And so I'm pulling these out and I'm just using the tweak key so I can see all that. Whoa, that's probably not what I wanted to do. Thought those looked strange. So if I go in and grab that face, pull that out, yeah. Now, here we go. Okay, so now, again, I'm using the tweak key. We can pull those out. So looking at these constraints on the selections constraint for border and angle, let's look at angle real quick. So I have angle selected. If I'm in vertices selection mode and the angle is 0, all right, essentially I can select just one vert, all right. If I put this at 1, you can see what this does for us. So what it allows me to do, if I have a surface that has some things that are lifted off of it, by changing my angle, there you can see I can, with an angle of 1 degree, I can pick up some of those vertices. If we increase that angle, let's go to 5, see what that does. So that picks up a few more. If I go to, say, 20, okay, so with 20, I can just very quickly click on this and I select all of those vertices, except you can see the boundaries of each of these mounts. Well, what that allows me to do then is I have those selected, I can take and I can push that down. So it's a quick way of selecting all of those vertices that are in that field, but not select the ones that are on the top. So that's where the advantage is of coming in for angle. What that is used for border, if I go in here and let me select some faces, Let me turn this off, and I'm just going to hold my tab key down here and just select some faces like this. So those faces are selected. I'm going to hit delete. All right, so now we have a border. A border on a mesh is not this edge. As far as, you know, this edge or that edge, you might think that that's a border, but that's really not a border. A border is a definition where you are actually flipping between the inside and the outside of the shape. So if I go in here and I say my constraints on border and I'm in edge mode, bingo, there you can see that that border highlights, that border lights up. So I can just do one click and the border lights up. That's nice. Again, I'm not completely sure why that's there, because if I just am in edge mode and I select one, but if I double click it, I get the whole border selected anyway. So, you know, you can double click in just edge mode, or you can go in and you can have a selection constraint where you have border selected, but it'll work either way. So anyway, this gives you a quick overview of some of the new features and layout and the way Maya 2016 looks like. And we talked a little bit about selection using tabs, so you can use kind of a paint mode when you're selecting, using the tweak key, so you can go in and tweak and pull with the last command. And some of the things that we can do in terms of using the modeling toolkit for symmetry, soft selection constraints, and soft selection in general. So this has been Phil with PhilFX.